Hello guys and gals, and this is Creepy Haunted Gaming. Yes, this is a collaboration between me and Mullet Mike. Please introduce yourself, Mullet Mike.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and Mike here with the sticky paddle, bringing you creepy haunted gaming. I'm not gonna lie, that just felt weird.
Oh man, it was. But here we are with the big creepypasta, Godzilla NES. This is a creepypasta that you have requested to me, and I believe people have requested to you too, Mike, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And we've decided to come together and read the whole thing together. So this is how it's going to go before we begin. This series is going to spread out over the course of each and every day, starting from today, obviously. And you're going to get a chapter each and every day with our analysis at the end. So it's going to be about, I think about 7 episodes so far, on a rough estimate. And basically, you're going to hear our thoughts on Godzilla NES. We'll read a new chapter, each day with us and see where the story takes us. So, without saying more, let us begin. Godzilla NES. When I was a little kid, the two things I loved most in life were Godzilla and NES games. So naturally, when Godzilla Monster of Monsters came out, it was like a dream come true. Well, almost. To sum it up, most of the game revolved around getting through very repetitive outer space levels, while smashing up tanks and jets and then fighting against Godzilla's monster enemies. Overall, it was pretty mediocre, but back then I didn't care. When I got the game as a present for my 10th birthday, I played it night and day, as much as I could. Unfortunately, I had traded the game for Amagon a year later, much to my regret when I found out what the game was like. Recently, I had bought a new NES system, and through a lot of hunting and asking around, my friend Billy finally managed to find a copy of Godzilla Monster of Monsters. I was pumped to play my favorite childhood game. It never even occurred to me to ask where Billy found it. He also gave me some other games like Legend of Zelda, Bomberman, and some stupid thing called Action 52, but Godzilla had to come first. So I started the game and the nostalgia came flooding back like a tidal wave. Godzilla's 8-bit theme song flooded proudly through the speakers, and I was soon grinning like an idiot. Some people laugh at me for playing such outdated games, but I've never had as much enjoyment for any game other than those on the NES. Those 8-bit games take me back to when things were much simpler, more safe. But after what's happened with this game, I don't have those feelings anymore. I had forgotten how quick the fun of smashing things as Godzilla wore off in the scrolling levels. The game bombards you with bullets and things crashing into you from every direction, and you're too big to avoid most of them. Although my excitement had worn down some, it wasn't long at all before I got to my first boss battle. My first opponent was Godzilla, an obscure squid kaiju, who had never been in a Godzilla movie. The most annoying thing about fighting Godzilla is that he always backs you into a corner and starts smacking you with his tentacle, and you're unable to move until he gets off of you. This move doesn't do any damage, but it can stall you until the timer runs out and you have to start the fight over, and he regains some health. It's as annoying as it sounds, and of course, he did it when I fought him. Only for some reason this caused the game to glitch up, because once he started smacking me, he never stopped. The timer is supposed to end the fight in about 40 seconds, but this lasted for nearly 5 minutes. After a while, the graphics started to mess up, with little red blocks all over the place. Which was weird, but I just took the game out and blew on it and then started again. I wasn't about to let a glitch stand in my way, so I started again, and this time defeated Godzilla and the level's other boss, monster, Moguera, without any problems. So then it was on to the next planet, Mars. I browsed around the board and found something unexpected, where Varen's piece should have been. There was instead a piece representing Titanosaurus. There were only 10 kaiju in the game, and Titanosaurus was not one of them, or so I thought. Perhaps Titanosaurus was originally intended to be in the game but was swapped out with Varen for some reason. So I began to feel very excited. Not only was I playing my favorite game, but I was playing a prototype of some sort of a new monster. Needless to say, I ran through the levels as fast as I could to see Titanosaurus in action. Fought Godzilla again and beat him before he could do his tentacle smack, but this time the glitch started happening when he died. Godzilla's sprite didn't sink to the bottom, but instead seemed to be devoured by the glitch, and his eye started randomly spawning all over the screen. I know now that these glitches with Godzilla were my first warning sign that something was very wrong with this game, but foolishly I ignored it and proceeded on to fight Moguera, who this time had a glitch of his own. Moguera was twice the size he should have been, which startled me. He was also considerably harder to beat than usual, which is to say not at all. But soon I had defeated him also. And when he died, yet another glitch happened. This happened extremely fast, so I was lucky to get a screen cap of it at all. But what happened was that the giant Maguire sprite started to shatter and melt. Also, if you look at the garbled text in the right corner of the screen, you'll notice what appears to be a bird in a cage. I still have no idea what that meant. At this point, I was about to fight Titanosaurus, but I was worried as to what kind of glitches would happen. But this time, to my surprise, the Titanosaurus looked just fine. Although all of the game's bipedal monsters were the same height, Titanosaurus was a bit taller. But since Titanosaurus actually was taller than Godzilla in his film debut, I thought this was kinda cool. After a very fun fight with a monster that wasn't supposed to be in the game, I took over the enemy base, and proceeded not to Jupiter like normal, but instead to Pathos. So this is Chapter 1 analysis so far, alright? So, as far as I can really say, this is not Sonic.exe bad. This is actually a very good creepypasta. Now here's where we're going to get really nitpicky, aren't we, Mike?
Oh yeah, very much so. That's what we do.
Exactly. That's how we roll. That's we gotta we gotta nitpick the hell out of it. So we brought up a couple points as we read this. Now first off, the player loves Godzilla, as we all know, reading on it. I mean, major fan. And you'll find this later as we read on. And in the cliches itself, I mean, that is a cliche we look at in a creepypasta, not to mention the fact that this player does also want to re-experience the nostalgia around it too. I mean, what do you think about that, Mike?
Well, also, considering that I am a self-proclaimed Godzilla fan as well, so I tend to have to be just a little bit tougher on this creepypasta than the average reader.
Oh, exactly.
But it's just like anything else. Of course, the guy was a big fan. Of course, he was, it's this nostalgic feeling. That just seems to go hand in hand with most creepypastas.
Precisely. Now, later on, you look at it, one of the interesting things we looked at both, we saw, like, Friend Billy, the Billy or whatever, that character, it reminded me a lot. I mean, I did a creepypasta, shitpasta back then, way back, about Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and I remembered that there was Bootman Bill, so it kind of reminded me of that, Bootman Bill, Billy, I think they're one of the same, but yeah, it's kind of a... it's kind of unique. You see a different way of obtaining the game, rather. I'm glad that wasn't an old man who just handed an NES card out. I'm glad that never happened.
Yeah, that's true.
Now,
I gotta say, though, it's like, I'm tired of all these names being like these simple, just, American-based names. Like, this will be the first Sonic EXE reference of many, I'm sure. But, like, Tom.
Oh my God, Tom was a big thing, I never capitalized and all. I never looked at the whole Tom thing. You're right, it was always like Tom, we got Billy, we got Bootman Bill, we got all these generic, names. I'm not saying, generic to offend anyone, obviously, for the people out there named Tom.
Once in a while, I'd like to hear a name like Mudar. You know what I'm saying?
I think the way things are going, you might actually see a real one with the name Mudar out there. But, moving on, let's see. Now, one of the things Mike brought up was that everything is normal at the beginning, but, shit hits the fan later, which is a cliche in itself. Everything is always normal, right?
Yeah, I think that just kind of goes back to, I guess, typical storytelling about building tension, how you want to start real subtly and then eventually build your way up.
Exactly.
But it contradicts itself, though. Wouldn't you agree?
Exactly. I mean, the thing is, a lot of creepypastas nowadays, you put the game in, unless it's like, a shit pasta, and I hate to say that all the time, but it's like, a lot of these ones that try to be like super amazing always make sure that nothing happens super bad in the beginning, right? Like, it's always, they're always in La La Land, but then like, when I hit the first level, the sun was a different color, and, it was weird, and the game was creepy, that's sort of a cliche you see in a lot of them.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things, I pointed out here was the game starts glitching. Now, I'll put up a screen cap here, all right? And I'll tell you, okay, the player says, this was weird. No one seems to note the severity of any glitch, right?
Right.
I mean, people are always like, oh, it's a little weird, but this isn't weird. I mean, Mike, does this seem weird to you? I mean, would you be creeped out, or would you find this weird?
I would... this is one of those things where it's like, is this really a glitch, or is this artist rendering of a glitch?
I mean, it kind of does look like. I mean, all the the words messing up. Yeah, you see that, but then you see the clusterfuck in the middle.
Right.
And you're just like, this isn't real. Okay, this is edited. And one of the later screenshots I'll show is Mike actually brought this up in this Titanosaurus screenshot. You told me that there was some technical faults here.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look really closely, you'll see that Titanosaurus is outlined with black pixels.
Yeah, around near the torso, really, the bottom torso, you know.
You see, you know.
And if you look at the arms as well.
Right. And if you look at Godzilla, they don't use black to outline the sprite, so it's a dark blue if you look closely enough. You know.
Yeah, it really does seem like it could have been. You know, it makes the whole photoshopping aspect, you know, more plausible.
Right. That's just, you know, that's one of those things that, you know, you have to really look for, but you'll see that it doesn't match up.
Exactly. Now, the other thing is that I brought up was the player is just ungodly quick with this whole screen capturing. All right, like every frame this player captures.
I'm gonna start calling this guy Quick Draw because he does not miss a beat.
No, this is fast as hell. I mean, just screen cap. Now, the other thing is what Mike did bring up was the fact that this isn't running on an emulator yet. I think the emulator part starts later.
Right.
This is running on an actual NES, apparently. Now, the creepy thing is how is this person recording it? I mean, you have to either be recording it. Now, there's no indication that there's going to be any posting anywhere. So why would you arbitrarily record this footage?
Exactly. I mean, if you're just casually playing the game for nostalgic
exactly,
then you know things like that, just those little things like that, don't add up. You know.
Exactly, and I mean, like, it could be an emulator here, but there's really no indication that we found in the entire chapter that it was. I mean, all we know is that Godzilla had to come first, so I think all we can really assume is that Godzilla is the first NES game they're putting into the cart, or the system itself, right?
Right.
So I think that's really all we got to say about Chapter 1, you know, I mean, it's starting off nice. I mean, we're getting a little nitpicky here. Don't worry, we'll get super nitpicky in the future chapters. I mean, they're longer, and there's more nitpicking to go there, but that's really all we got to say about...
To reiterate what Mudahar said, this doesn't mean that we don't necessarily like this creepypasta, but we just tend to take a little bit closer.
Exactly. I mean, after such a long time of doing this, we do tend to overanalyze at times and, you know, really look at everything.
Exactly.
But that's really all we got to say about Chapter 1, Earth and Mars. Moving on to the next chapter, Pathos. So we will see you then.
Pathos was the same as Jupiter in layout, except the board was dark blue rather than green. The first thing I noticed was that all the usual level icons had been replaced by a blue rock and some kind of orange honeycomb shape. There was one icon that had part of the jungle icon shape, but I didn't pay much thought to it. I checked the other side of the board to see the new monster. Instead of Hedorah, it was Biollante. But that couldn't have been right. Godzilla vs. Biollante didn't come out until 1989. This game was made in 1988. Perhaps Toho put Biollante in the game to build excitement for the movie next year, but maybe changed their minds. I tried to rationalize the game's abnormalities by any way I could, but this would prove to be futile. Pathos Map song was the first new song I heard in the game. Like most of the new songs, it was hard to describe, but I'll try. It started out slow and suspenseful, much slower than any song in the game. But I'd say, I don't know, every 12 seconds or so, there would be a loud clashing sound in the tempo chain. It was like the composer randomly played parts from 5 different songs with the same instrument. I moved Godzilla over to one of many blue rock icons that had replaced the jungle icons and started the level. The level resembled a blue mountain range with a blood-red planet in the sky. But there was something odd to these mountains. They had a shredded paper look to them. I thought at first maybe the glitch had affected it, but it looked far too intentional. I quickly noticed something else about this new level. There were no enemies at all, not even any obstacles. I should also mention that this is where the point meters started to become glitched beyond comprehension. It didn't bother me much. I never kept up with the game points anyway. So without having to focus on anything, I listened to the music while walking through the level unopposed. The music had a sorrowful feel to it. It would have been rather pleasant had I heard it in a normal game. The level went on for 3 screens, but with no obstacles around, I finished it very quickly. I tried other levels of the same type to see if any enemies appeared, but there was none. There was little else to be seen in the Blue Mountains, so I tried another level type. I started one of the orange levels, and my eyes were assaulted with a grotesque background of tumorous orange eyes. The sky was the same as the ground, so I assumed the game was indicating that this level takes place in a cave. The only enemies here were Mantango spawn, but as you can see, the little bastards were everywhere. The music certainly didn't help, with a mixture of screeching sounds and loud drum beats that sounded like a monster's theme in a horror film. After completing it, I tried to avoid playing through any more of these levels whenever I could. The map was so short that it was only a few minutes before I was headed towards a rematch with Godzilla and Mogra, but this time their sprites and attack patterns were vastly different. I fought Mogra first. Mogra's replacement was a flying machine with a slight resemblance to the Pasculia alien. It was a bit like fighting Mothra, only it moved with a lot more grace. It attacked by spinning its front tentacle like a corkscrew, and it had an eye beam, except now it fired from the drill. This lanky aberration had replaced Godzilla, and the new beast was more of a challenge. It would run and jump at a fast pace, constantly swinging its arms around, making it hard to get close. And of course, it tried to pin me in the corner with as much annoying resolve as ever. I defeated it using a combination of tail whips and heat beam spamming. I defeated them and was going to fight Titanosaurus. But when I started the fight, Titanosaurus was nowhere to be seen, and the game simply went back to the map with the Titanosaurus piece now missing. There was no one left to fight now but Biollante, so I eagerly started the battle. I was quite surprised that Biollante started the fight in her rose form. She was immobile and used tentacles to keep me away from the main body, which took most damage. As expected, she turned into her final form after taking enough damage. The sprite looked pretty damn good for 8-bit. The battle technique was the same, except now Biollante could move, albeit slower than any other monster. Being hit by the tentacles did more damage now, and Biollante could do an acid spit, which I managed to avoid by jumping in the screen cap. Not much more difficult to beat than Titanosaurus. It only took 2 rounds. But when Biollante was gone, the music had stopped and there was a new icon replacing the base. This icon wasn't there before I beat Biollante. It resembled a red tribal mask, and I had the feeling of dread when I saw it. But since it replaced the base, it must be the only way to exit Pathos. I moved Godzilla to the square and started the level. Run. It was a hellish looking place with no sky and a flickering fire in the background. The fire looked far more advanced than anything I've seen on the NES. The music was in the form of a slow, steady drum sound resembling a heartbeat. All the text on the top of the screen and the life bar were gone. In their place was a single bit of text in the middle of the screen that said, "Run." My feeling of dread had intensified. I cautiously walked through the level, but like the Blue Mountains, there were no enemies. I paced around for a minute before thinking, run? From what? The first time it hit me, I didn't even see it. I heard a noise outside of my room and turned back to see if something fell, and when I looked back, Godzilla was dying. I figured it must have been a glitch, but I wasn't going to play through the game without Godzilla, so I restarted the game and went to the password screen. Have I ever mentioned how creepy the password screen music is? If you've played the game, you know what I mean. It doesn't at all fit the mood of the game. It's more like something from a horror game. Maybe they made it like that so kids wouldn't cheat. I was quite annoyed at this point because I thought I was going to have to fight all the monsters again. But that didn't happen. The game started me right where I was before I started the red face level. So I tried again, making sure to pay attention this time. That's when I heard a low bellowing sound. And then I saw it. This thing. You know that feeling your body has when you feel like you're in extreme danger? You start to recoil and tense up as the adrenaline flows through your veins and your nerves start to feel very cold. Well, that's the feeling I had when I looked at this screen cap. I haven't seen all the Godzilla movies, but I'm pretty damn sure this was never in any of them. It had to be something the creators made up. But what kind of sick fuck would put this in a children's game? By sheer dumb luck, or perhaps the adrenaline boost, I managed to run fast enough to get away from it. It ran very fast, so much so that if you saw it, you were almost certainly going to die. And when I say die, I mean your monster gets killed instantly if the creature touches him. Once I had gone back to the map, I was so afraid that I was extremely tempted to shut the game off and to try to pretend like this had never happened. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. It couldn't have been real. And even if I wanted to continue, I still had to get Mothra through the chase level. But as I stayed inactive on the map screen for a few minutes, my fear was replaced by burning curiosity. What the hell had just happened? What was the rest of the game like? I only had to beat this level with Mothra and then it was on to the next world. But when I moved Mothra to the red face, the game registered it as me beating the level. I was quite relieved. I tried to prepare myself for the next world. Trance.
So that was chapter Pathos. What did you think about it, Mike? I thought it was nice. Yeah, I mean, like, it kind of had, like, some slow progression to it towards the middle, but the ending was, you know, definitely intriguing. I mean, what do you think about it so far?
I say so far so good. It's got all the things that makes you want to continue reading. You know, you know there's got some kind of payoff at this point, so you just want to keep reading and see what that payoff is.
Yeah, especially when you see the creature towards the end. Now, again, let's go into the whole analyzing / nitpicking of the chapter. The first one. Over-analysis. So, the first screenshot in particular I'll pull up. Some of these, I don't know about... I've never played the Godzilla NES games, you know, personally as I'm doing this right now, but some of these sprites really look like a Game Boy game to me. I mean, some of them just look like they're just photoshopped into it. I mean, you've played the game. Tell me, you know, there's some similarities going on.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, there's, you know, we touched on it on the last analysis that a lot of the sprites just kind of contradict. You know, they don't match the old NES sprites. You know.
Now, some of the stuff too, it's like as you move on, you see that there's new map songs. There's all new songs. Like you know, the songs are new. They're hard to describe. You know, whatever. They're slow and suspenseful. You see this all the time too. You know, there's always different music. But I'm kind of glad that the player does know that it's different too, instead of, you know, completely disregarding it, right?
Right. Like you said, he's a big fan. So apparently,
yeah, and he's a big fan. You know, some creepypastas you see where, yes, they are big fans. They're huge fans, but they often disregard even the tiniest things and the big things sometimes. You know, and I'm glad here there's acknowledgement going on.
Right.
You know, considering, you know, the last chapter, you know, there's some things that just seem weird. Now you see that there's more acknowledgement. Now, one of the points you brought up was, you know, about Boilant, and, you know, how you thought it was a teaser by Toho, you know, like, because Boilant, you know, could you tell us about that too? Like, how it appeared in the game and its movie releases too? Because that's a big thing in this creepypasta.
Yeah, no, I might be mistaken, but I think this game was originally released in 1987. Well, the Godzilla movie, Godzilla vs. Biollante, was released in 1988. And even the writer of the creepypasta states how he thought that maybe this was like a teaser. Maybe Toho was aware and already had like a character design for Biollante, so they went ahead and added him into this game. And I thought personally that was a nice touch because, it seems somewhat believable. I could see something like that happening.
Right. And then, I mean, like, if you're like us and you read later on into it, you'll know that it's kind of not the case. I mean, minor spoiler there, but yeah, it's a nice touch there too, like how they're introducing the characters. But they feel realistic, they're not just thrown in to be like, oh, the new character came out of nowhere, I'm glad there's some rationale, some reasoning that's coming out.
Right.
Now, then you come to some of the cliches here, which we'll bring out is the blood red planet and the blood red stuff. Trust me, the color red is going to be a huge thing in this creepypasta. It's not the color me and Mike have an issue against. It's the overusage, you know what I mean?
Oh my god. Hyper-realistic blood everywhere.
I mean, come on. I mean, every
creepypasta, it's got to have the color red in it. Apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently red is the scariest color of them all. So...
I mean, I'm looking at the screenshots here, and I'm not, pissing myself. But anyways, moving on. Now, here's the big cliche. The big one. No enemies at all. No obstacles. No nothing. It's so overused.
Oh, yeah. That apparently is supposed to be really weird. But there is...
It's like, how does it make it creepy? How does it make it creepier for you?
Honestly, it doesn't. Not for me personally. But I can try to see it from other people's point of view. And I guess, maybe because there is nothing there, you feel a little, desolate and alone, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe the fact that something could possibly pop out at any moment. Maybe.
Yeah, like Bullet Bill just flies into you.
Yeah.
But yeah, you see it a lot in creepypastas where there really isn't anything. I mean, at least for me, yeah, there is the ambiance there too.
Right.
Because there's nothing there, you're like, oh man, there's got to be something. You get that feeling that you're alone.
Yeah.
But, the way it's overused like this, like an entire level, it's just... The way they portray it in a creepypasta, like, oh man, it's creeping me out. I mean, I don't ever get that effect in real life,
Right.
I mean, realistically, if you look at it, you really wouldn't get the effect. I mean, but everyone is different.
Everyone is, yeah, and I like I said, I'm just trying to see it from somebody else's point of view.
Right. But then, you go on to some of the other screenshots, and yes, we're going to talk a lot about the screenshots, because this creepypasta, essentially, this is its thing.
Well, the screenshots are a big part of it.
They are.
Said this yet, but I really like the fact that there are a lot of screenshots in this.
Yeah, like if you look at some of these ones, you see these brand new enemies. I mean, we're calling them Metroids, but yeah, you see some of these new enemies. So the environments, I've never played the game, so they look kind of new to me. But some of the enemies, I don't think have ever existed in a game.
Well, okay, I've played the game, and you're gonna have to bear with me because it's been a little while since I've played. And mind you, I never really made it too far in the game. But when I played, all I remember fighting were a bunch of tanks and airplanes, spacecraft, laser guns. I don't remember seeing any of these Metroids or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, Toho should have made this game instead. But anyways, moving on. You see Mogwera, and then you see I'm putting up the screen capture here. It's. Could you elaborate more on it? You're more of the Godzilla person than I am.
Okay, I know Makaiju. I'm familiar with Mogra, or Mogra. It's different pronunciation, but
tomato.
Tomato, exactly. But I noticed there's a lot of things the same. That the screw drill face. That's part of Mogra, and the color scheme's the same, but it's just a really twisted version of Mogra. It really is. It's just a convoluted.
And the thing is,
mess.
The issue I have personally is the fact that this sprite alone really doesn't have any sense to be put into it. Everything is making sense so far. Everything is in here for a reason.
Right.
But this alone kind of doesn't really have a reason. I think it was just kind of put in there for shock value. I mean, if it's like this aberration replaced Godzilla, more of a challenge. I understand it's more of a challenge, but it's it's like you go from genuinely building up, and then you throw in something like this, and then you go back to genuinely building up. You know what I mean? It's just in there.
I have to agree. It feels. I hate to say it, but it just kind of feels like filth. It feels like he's trying to fluff up the story to make it a little bit longer. So let's just.
Yeah, I mean, this is turning into a novel now, but you look at something else, like, I'll bring up this one with Godzilla, it does, this is a short point, but over here, if you look at the legs, it does look a little Photoshop, so yeah, I mean, it's not like a perfect job, too. I mean, if you're really looking close, if you're really nitpicking, you know, you pull out the fact that it's not, you know,
Yeah.
completely real. I mean, if you look at some of the glitched text, it doesn't look like anything we've seen on an NES. We've seen glitchy games on the NES.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Some of the glitches just feel like complete, like, you know, artist renditions or something.
Yeah, it's a little too polished, I think, to be.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the last part, oh my god, this last one, with the new character, the new red creature, the spider rat thing. Oh, it's intriguing as hell.
That is awesome. That's one thing about the story that I definitely like so far.
Exactly. You know what? It feels a lot like Ben, except, you know, this thing isn't even in the game. You know, it's like, because it's not in the game, it makes us more intrigued. It makes us more creeped out. Like, what is it? I mean, if you even look at the face, it's just such a creepy thing.
Yeah, it's very well done. You know, and that's kind of interesting because we were just talking about how, like, they just used a twisted version of Mothra. You just mentioned Ben, which was based off of the Link statue in Majora's Mask. This
Right.
Red, or whatever you want to call him, it's got to be, it's a totally original creature, and that's what I find really fascinating about it.
I know, it sucks you into the story and you want to know more about it.
Yeah, it's good.
So it's nice that they brought it in. I mean, this is where the story really gets into higher gear, okay? So you'll be able to see it later on. But yeah, this is what we thought about Pathos. So the next chapter we're going to move into is Trance. So you will see us then.